the path to healing and the path to consciously evolving for me is it starts with the desire for change. So for anyone to change their relationship dynamic, say you're going out with the same type of person over and over again, you find yourself showing up in the same kind of ways and you want something different. Or if you're in a relationship and, whatever the dynamic is, you both want to make things work and you want to make your relationship better. You want to be more vulnerable, go to deeper levels, whatever the case may be. It has to start off with the desire to change. And that is, for me, it's step one, because when we truly understand just how hard it is to create new habits, to actually show up and change, we then understand how near impossible it is for us to change someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that there, if you understand that what you want in someone else, you cannot make happen, you cannot fix them, change them, nag them into transformation. It has to come from the deep desire within to change. And without that desire, I don't think the other steps work. So, that desire for change, it can come from several different places. It can be your sort of rock bottom moment. So I can say for me, I had struggles in love and relationship dynamics for years and years and years before I finally hit a certain level where I was just like, do you know what? I surrender. I've got to look within. I've got to find out what's going on, because all of these, running away, the arguments, all the other things, it's not working. You kind of have to be knocked down a little bit to be like, right, I surrender and I need to have a look at things, and I fundamentally desire change.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'm excited to introduce one of our inspiring guests. She's dedicated her life to empowering men and women to heal and to thrive. Her name is Nina Mandair. She's a retreat leader and empowerment coach, and she helps her guests to transform their lives and their relationships and elevate their self-worth to embrace a more fulfilling and purposeful life. So thank you so very much, Nina, for being with us today. We're excited to have a bit of a discussion about your work and how you help people.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I love that intro. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. So let me start by asking you, what's your background? Who are you?
Wow. Okay. So, I've always had a bit of a passion for human behavior. So the first half of my sort of life and career has all been in human resources and how to sort of motivate employees. It wasn't until about 5-ish years ago that I started out on my journey of studying psychology. I've become a sex, love, and relationship coach. And now I have sort of moved on to coach men and women to healing. I think we've all got wounds and traumas that come out of our childhood that sort of play out in our relationships, in the way that we sort of show up for love and life. And I love helping people to sort of look into that, know their worth and thrive. I've been on a sort of lifelong journey in this area, maybe sometimes indirectly without understanding it. But yeah, certainly the more conscious part of my life, I've been looking into what's shaped me as a person. And it all kind of started off in a dire relationship, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit.
Where are you from and what's your background?
I'm actually originally from Southampton. I grew up in Southampton. So there's a few little twangy words that come through sometimes.
Okay.
Have an accent. And I moved to London about 10 years ago But my background, heritage-wise, is my dad is Punjabi Indian. My mum is originally from Denmark, so she's Danish and English. So I'm mixed Indian, Danish, and English.
Oh, lovely. That's a brilliant combination right there. In terms of your journey, what got you into becoming an empowerment coach?
Yeah, so for me, there was clearly a pattern in my relationships, but I hadn't really made it conscious. And so it was a very rock bottom moment for me. I was in a sort of relationship turned situationship, and I was absolutely addicted to this guy who was, to put it very lightly, quite a terrible person. So it was a very toxic dynamic, but I couldn't get away from it. So I'd moved from where I was living. I changed my number 100 times. I was like, oh, I'm going to go on a sort of, empowering solo travel journey and find myself. All the while, I just kept finding that I would end up straight back with this guy who, treated me horribly.
Oh,
and it got to a certain point, where then I was like, I have got to look at myself, take accountability, and understand why this pattern keeps playing out over and over again. So I went on a 4-month sort of solo travel journey, backpacking. It was amazing. But ultimately, I come back in March 2018, straight back to the guy, straight back to the guy that I'd been trying to run away from. And so that very week on my return, I picked up like my first self-help book, and I read the words, a father's love teaches a girl how to be loved by a man, something like that. And I just sort of closed the book, put it on my bedstand, went to sleep, and I was just like, do you know what? If this is what it's all about, the relationship with my father, then I'm going to have to call it a night, because this is a whole other can of worms. And it was ultimately those words that kickstarted my healing journey and allowed me to finally understand why these patterns kept playing out in my love life. And ultimately, to put it very simply, I was going out with men who were exactly like my dad. Well, the men prior, similar to traits with my dad, but the guy that had me hooked and I don't know, like under some kind of spell, who was my true Achilles heel, his traits were exactly like my dad's. And so ultimately, it was the healing from my fatherhood wound that needed my attention before anything was going to change in my romantic dynamics. So I went on a full-on healing journey. It did so many things, read so many books, so many different therapies and retreats, etc. And that kind of led me to then be like, I need to help people in this area, because we just don't know what we don't know. And it's the things that are sort of created and embedded in our very, very formative, vulnerable childhood years that become, our blueprint. They sink into the subconscious and then is sort of unknowingly playing out in our lives without us kind of, consciously knowing. So that was my journey. And that's why I feel, truly empowered and honored to help people in that area and beyond. Because obviously, I think when we start becoming conscious about things and we go on our personal development and, conscious evolution, we move on from one thing to the next to the next. And so as a whole, I empower people to sort of, take their power back, but also thrive in their worth and their love for self. Ultimately, how's that?
That's brilliant. That sounds wonderful. If I'm one of your guests on your retreat and you're kind of one of your clients, what would you say would be your approach to help me to get to know you, get to trust you to you, and sharing with you the challenges that I'm experiencing, and then allowing you the opportunity to then come in and actually doing the work and helping me to recover?
Yeah. So ultimately, over time, this is what I found to be very important. And I've sort of taken a look at myself and how I show up to different, situations, whether it be friends or, in my sort of consultancy business or, family or new social dynamics. And ultimately, for me personally, one of my key values in life as a whole is to show up truly in my authenticity. So it's not to put on any show. It's not to try and be somebody else. For me, it is important for me to come as I am, exactly as I am. I am enough. I am worthy. And ultimately, when you show up in your truth, you attract people that are your people. So I think we can be honest about the fact that we don't like everybody, we don't gel with everybody, and not everybody likes and loves us. But our people, when we just have that vibe with, that's some of the sort of unspoken, unseen things that are just working out in a very synchronized way. And I think if you honor yourself and show up in your truth, ultimately you kind of give permission for people to show up in their truth, but you just allow for, if that's my person, if they like me and I like them, it will work out. On this sort of other side, it's important for me to be vulnerable, to share my truth, to not sugarcoat things. I've done lots and lots of things in my love life. The things that I've done in love, I shamed myself for so long. But actually, when I did the healing work, when I looked into my own wounds and conditioning, it all made logical sense. So for me, it's very important to show up in my truth, in my vulnerabilities, and in my full vulnerability, especially when I'm working in such sensitive sort of areas with other people. Like, we are all here, we're all human, we are all enough, and we all have wounds and conditioning that we need to look at. That's just a human experience,
Okay, good. Thank you for that. So imagine me and my wife, Caroline,
Yeah.
we are your clients, okay? And we want to have the full experience, okay? We want to come to Aruba and we want to experience this full renewal.
Yes.
Take us through the experience and what you offer and how you can help us. So we thankfully, knock on wood, we've got a very good marriage.
Yeah.
And we've been married for 20 years,
Yeah.
But let's assume that it was struggling and we need your help, okay?
Yeah. So I mean, firstly, whether it's relationships, whether it's one-to-one coaching or retreats, ultimately the path to healing and the path to consciously evolving for me is it starts with the desire for change. So for anyone to change their relationship dynamic, say you're going out with the same type of person over and over again, you find yourself showing up in the same kind of ways and you want something different. Or if you're in a relationship and, whatever the dynamic is, you both want to make things work and you want to make your relationship better. You want to be more vulnerable, go to deeper levels, whatever the case may be. it has to start off with the desire to change. And that is, for me, it's step one, because when we truly understand just how hard it is to create new habits, to actually show up and change, we then understand how near impossible it is for us to change someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that there, if you understand that what you want in someone else, you cannot make happen, you cannot fix them, change them, nag them into transformation, it has to come from the deep desire within to change. And without that desire, I don't think the other steps work. So, that desire for change, it can come from several different places. It can be your sort of rock bottom moment. So I can say for me, I had struggles in love and relationship dynamics for years and years and years before I finally, hit a certain level where I was just like, do you know what? I surrender. I've got to look within. I've got to find out what's going on, because all of these, running away, the arguments, all the other things, it's not working. You kind of have to be knocked down a little bit to be like, right, I surrender, and I need to have a look at things, and I fundamentally desire change. And I think this can also come from, some life sort of big life changes. I've seen that as well, like, maybe a certain level of grief, or a passing has happened from someone close to you that you're like, do you know what? Yeah. This has woke me up. Like, I want better. I want more. And so some of our like rock bottom moments can be our key crucial moments that are like plot twists. They're the pivots to change. They're the bounce back, or like, the wake up call that you needed to say, do you know what? I want more. So it's important that there is this true desire for change. And that kind of, there are different kind of approaches with retreats and coaching, but ultimately, because my retreats are, quite flamboyant and luxury experiences. So my view on that is that you get everything in one. So you get your personal development, you get your healing, like in the Queen retreat in Aruba. Obviously this one is for women. This is working on all of our sort of feminine wounds that are holding us back from stepping into everything that we desire. So it's kind of built around stepping into your Queen era, as in, do you want to start that business? What's holding you back in showing up fully in love? It depends on your personal experience, but we work through the feminine wounding, which it runs very deep, right? But in the one-to-one, it depends on your specific change. So obviously my one-to-one coaching is built very much around healing relationship patterns. So, that desire it starts with the desire to change. And then, for me, it's really around building your knowledge of self. So this is where we go in and we find out, what are the things that are going on in the subconscious, which are playing out today without you kind of knowing. Because before you can become really emotionally available and emotionally intelligent, you have to be able to emotionally relate to yourself and understand yourself. Understand your perceptions, where your beliefs coming from, why are you showing up with these certain behaviors, why are you choosing who you choose, and questioning that. What are your projections, what are your triggers, where do they come from? Because it's often, in relationships or any other kind of dynamic, we can be triggered by something because we've given this certain behavior a meaning that might not actually be the meaning. The meaning comes from our bank of memories and experiences. And so we've projected a meaning from our kind of memory bank onto the situation. Meanwhile, if you think of like the subtext of a text, we give a lot of meaning to text that might not actually be that meaning. So then we can be running around quite triggered by things that actually are triggering a wound from within subconsciously. We are giving that meaning to. So anyway, I know that I'm going off quite a bit.
No. This is good. This is very, very good. I think, I mean, as you're speaking, I'm relating to what you're saying. Yeah.
I can see tick, tick, tick.
So yeah, so please continue.
Sure. Okay. So desire to change, knowledge of self, and where our wounding is, where our patterns come from. I really start off, especially in the coaching, is let's look at all the patterns in your relationships. Now let's look at your key figures from childhood. Let's look at how you're showing up, and let's have a look at where that come from, because for the most part, we're conditioned beings. It comes from somewhere. For us to understand that the way, our self-talk, our compassion and love and understanding for self, that will cultivate transformation. We can be, if we really take a conscious look at how we judge ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, and how we have been for so long, if that negative approach worked, it would have worked by now. It doesn't. We have to love ourselves, hold ourselves with compassion and understanding. And for me, when we can logically understand where things have come from, it allows for that understanding and that love. It wasn't your fault. Like, you were completely taught this, all your experiences shaped this, and you can kind of have that, that compassion to allow you to heal. And then when we start looking at, okay, our patterns and how we are today, and how that's aligned with our desire for change, we can then start picking out, okay, when I'm going for that person and with those traits, that doesn't align with my goal and my life and the desire that I have. And we can start bringing awareness that, oh yeah, I'm going to, I had a huge pattern of overgiving without reciprocity. And so I had to keep, right, this doesn't align with my desire. I have to catch it. So that's the next stage, is awareness. Oh, I'm going to overgive again. That's okay. It's okay. That's your pattern. Come back, choose again, stop yourself from doing that. We're not doing that anymore. That's an old pattern. That's not what we want to bring into, the next phase of our life. And it certainly doesn't align with our desire to change. And ultimately, once you've kind of got your desire for change, your knowledge and your awareness repeated over time, it breeds transformation. We are resilient beings. We can rewire and we can transform, but it has to start with the desire to change initially.
Well said.
Hey, thank you. Do you agree? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. It's all very true what you've said. It resonates with me very strongly. I mean, I think, first of all, what you said about getting to the point, you can't change people, and so for people to change, they need to get to that rock bottom place where they think, maybe I should change, and then from that place they can start to rebuild. And attacking themselves and beating themselves up to change isn't going to do it. Otherwise, you would have done it. You said it would have done it before. I love the hug. I love the hug.
Yeah, it's all inner child healing. It's a lot of inner child that's running our adult life.
Is that something that you do in your coaching program with your people?
Yeah, because what happens is I use sort of like a holistic approach to healing. So we do a little bit of talk, we do some sort of drop into the body and some sort of like somatic practices where we can kind of journey to where did that initial belief come from, or when did you first start thinking that, for example. And ultimately, the healing journey is really, like I said, it's about finding out where these patterns of behaviors come from and the beliefs about ourselves initially started. And so it becomes a reparenting journey. That's the inner child healing. Give her a little hug. Oh, she's so lovable. She's so worthy. Absolutely right. Because ultimately it's love and compassion that works. And I think
that's brilliant. You'll forgive me if I steal that from you, yeah?
Keep it. And do you know what? We've got to think about the bigger picture, I think, in terms of healing. And when I look at, if I look at my journey from a sort of spiritual lens, it's, these things happened, you learned these things. Now you're going out to help others sort of learn and evolve and heal. And every single person that, I've spoken to on my journey that's helped me, I share that with others. Every person that I speak to on my journey, it becomes a ripple effect. So hopefully healing and loving ourselves and trying to be, the best person we can be for ourselves and everyone around us starts to become more normalized, right? So ultimately, society is made up of people. We are all individuals. Let's have a knock-on effect and let love and healing ripple, please.
Well, bless you. Bless you. You've got such a good heart, and it comes across. Thank you. Thank you for being a good person and for having such good desires for the world and society.
Thank you.
In terms of the one-on-ones that you do with your people and helping them to kind of with the you use the word, it sounded like semantics. It wasn't semantics, it was like that. What was that word that you used?
I said holistic because it's a whole approach. So and it is somatic work as well. So we start off it's different areas of the brain that we sort of cultivate. So ultimately, we can do a lot of talking, which gets to our conscious mind.
Yeah.
But we need to address our subconscious and we need to address our nervous system, because a lot of our desires are resisted in our nervous system because we don't feel safe. So it can be a yes here, but it's not a yes subconsciously. It's very hard to make it manifest. So this is like the power of visualization, is making it real in your nervous system so that your nervous system is not working against you. And it's also, you may have heard the term from, the very famous book, The Body Keeps a Score. So a lot of our trauma, a lot of our woundings are stored in the body and they come out in many different ways. So that's when, I do a lot of guiding to access areas and sort of rewire on a cellular basis, but also we can incorporate breath work for release and, some sort of other practices in the body to maybe shake out, but it ultimately completes a stress cycle, so it's not still stored in the body. And I think there are more and more, bodies of research that support that simply just talking through our traumas doesn't fully release it. And I can definitely say from the years and years I had in talk therapy, which was absolutely amazing, absolutely loved my therapist. When I moved on and started looking at and working with somatic practices, it just helps to get to areas and release woundings and traumas at a lot faster pace, because we're accessing all different areas. And I haven't actually used, the tapping modalities just yet, but I think they are all in support of this holistic approach to healing.
So tell us about your Aruba retreat. I'm very excited about the prospects of that.
My Aruba retreat is literally the best. So this is all built around, it's called the Queen Retreat. It's like the creme de la creme. So what I've done with this retreat is I have incorporated absolutely everything. So it's a 7-day immersion into transformation. It's about, going that step further to release what's holding you back. And I have a different topic of each day that we work through. So it could be, from around the sisterhood wound, the motherhood wound. It could be around sort of healing your wounded maiden. It's all different aspects that cover the feminine woundings that are ultimately holding us women back. We share similar wounds, and so we go through, each day on the personal development side, we have a workshop. We then have some somatic releases, and we then have letting go practices, and that might be with sort of breath work and different modalities. So we each day cover off a new topic. We go through a series of different sort of workshops and modalities to healing and transforming. But we start each day watching the sunrise, journaling, meditating. We have 20-minute different sort of areas of movement. So it might be a Zumba sort of class. It might be yoga. We then have a private chef, Queen treatment throughout. Come on. We have a private chef for preparing breakfast and our meals in the evenings. We go out every day we go out on a different sort of tour, whether that's a hiking tour, it might be sort of meditating with the butterflies, it might be, Flamingo Island for the day, or a catamaran cruise. Wow. We go out on a different tour, and we also explore a different beach, because I love Aruba. Aruba stole my heart. It was truly magical and transformational for me. And so by coming on my Queen Retreat, what I want is true, wholesome, deep transformation and personal development. So we cover that. I want tourism. So you get to see the whole of the island, embrace the culture and explore everything. I want time to have fun and relax so that you can recoup, rejuvenate, and feel refreshed for when you return. But I also want loads of fun, because we are here to live our best life through and through. Sisterhood, bond in sisterhood. So we go out, we have a private cabana on Flamingo Island. We have a private catamaran cruise. So it is a wholesome week that covers absolutely everything. And it is like my baby, my masterpiece. And yeah, I can't scream and shout about Aruba enough. But it's, it's high-end, it's luxury, and it really is about embracing queen energy, because once you're on your healing journey, there are no limits. We have to, because we've started to make some things conscious, we are consciously, continuously evolving from there. So there are no limits. We can create what we want, and we can have it all.
So your clients or your guests who come on this Queen retreat, after when they return home, so they've been given like the Kickstarter that will help them to be able to follow certain practice or habits that will help them for the rest of their lives. Would they need to come back again and kind of reignite the experience, or how does that work?
Yeah, no. So I mean, you could always come back again if you wish, but ultimately, I would say that you learn practices that if you continue to embed as a habit, you'll always be able to come back and be like, "Oh, I feel something. What's holding me back? I feel some resistance. What's going on here? Let me just drop in." And so you have the tools to take you forward and to continuously evolving. But ultimately, we have compounded wounds running the show. And so, you might go into the sisterhood wound is huge for women. We don't actually realize just how much we have wounds from friendships and from this don't be too much, oh, she loves herself too much, all of these kind of things, when actually we're fighting against a lot of those things. And so it might be that other things come up over time, but what happens now is you have the tools and the modalities to work through that in your own time. So it just depends on how many wounds are sort of running deep and how much you want to evolve, really.
So I find it very interesting. The sisterhood kind of wounds or experience. Do you mind like exploring that? So what would lead to a woman feeling like she's had these negative sisterhood experiences and would therefore need to fix that in those in her mind so that she can, or in her amygdala, or so that she can figure out how to recover and heal from that.
Okay. So, for example, I want to start a business. I have a lot of expertise in this area, but something is holding me back. I don't understand. Okay. So when we drop in and we visualize you having this wholesome, beautiful business where you are self-promoting, where you are walking confidently in your expertise, what is the resistance that's going on? As you sort of drop in, okay, there is this huge sisterhood wound that is held in my subconscious that is completely holding me back from showing up in my truth, in my glory, in my confidence, in my expertise. And when I sit with that, something comes up where, I dressed up, I went outside, and I was like, oh, look at me. This memory seems to be when I'm 11 years old. And these girls laughed at me. And they said, why are you wearing that for? We're just outside, we're just playing. That's horrible. And so for example, and that kind of experience now has been compounded another time when you were, I did a presentation at school when I was 14 years old, and they started laughing at me. So what have these experiences, and we all have different experiences, what has this told me about myself? This has told me that I need to shrink to be safe. This has told me to not walk in what I really want to wear, do, say, show up, because I'm not good enough. That experience told me that I was not good enough. They're going to laugh at me. I'm going to be disconnected from the group. We're social beings. We thrive off connection. And so that experience taught me that if I show up in my truth, if I step outside the norms, if I'm too much, if I dress up and show off, that I am going to be disconnected, I'm going to be outed from the group. So then we need to channel that inner child. You wasn't too much, babe. You are born to shine. However they were showing up, however they treated you, is a reflection of their own experiences, what's going on with themselves, and it's not about you. You were born to shine, to walk in your truth. If you have this God-given desire to set this business up, to run these classes, whatever desire you have, that is your truth, and that is what you've got to show up and do. You have these inner wounds and these negative, limited self-beliefs that were created by other people, given to you, which are not true. But because they've been running in our subconscious mind, without us consciously knowing, they've been running the show. That's where the resistance comes from. So anytime that you have this desire, but you're not taking aligned action, there is something going on within that needs your attention, needs your love, needs your compassion, needs your rewiring to say that you can. And that is the Queen Retreat. And it's I run the same sort of thing, in the retreats that I've run before, called the Love Reset, and it's around healing the masculine wounds. But ultimately, we are here to live the best life we can, to show up in as much truth and authenticity as we can, and to go for it. And so all of those things that are holding us back, they come from a place that was given to us. It's not the truth. It was not our fault. It was experiences that we had that have conditioned us to believing certain things about ourselves, about the world, about others, and about how safe it is to truly show up in our truth, in our authenticity, and go for it. We have one life. This very life we won't have again. We owe it to ourselves to go for it and to heal and to transform, because ultimately that is what empowerment is about. Empowerment is about understanding where your power was taken from you and taking it back.
Wow.
She went off then. That got a bit spiritual there, didn't it?
Yeah, wow, good job. Good job. It's very wholesome, good stuff, actually. I'm thinking about everything that you're saying, and it leaves me feeling good. You know what I mean? It's also it's pure, it's good feelings, and I can see how what the imagery you painted with that, the 11-year-old and the 14-year-old, perfect.
Yeah. And what you have to realize is when you start on your journey of mind-body connection, you have to feel safe enough for these things to arise. And what we've done as coping mechanisms for so long is suppress things. We suppress the things that hurt, that we don't want to acknowledge. We just want to push it down and escape. But it comes out in so many different ways. We are carrying around deep trauma, sadness, anger, and it comes out in projection in other ways that trigger that. And so, I don't know if you've heard that saying that's sort of like, you bleed on other people that didn't hurt you because you're not addressing, it's not, I don't know how it's said, but when you don't address the initial wound, it comes out in other ways to other people. Yeah.
That's good. And I'm imagining all these women, these groups, do they keep in touch after the retreat? Do they become like lifelong friends and buddies? And
do you know what's, yeah, absolutely, because the sisterhood is real. When we start talking about deep and vulnerable things, right? And so the powerful thing that I have realized on my own journey, and then when I take other people on a journey, is that when someone shows up in their truth and their vulnerability and they go first to say something, then everybody else does. And ultimately, when we start talking on this very conscious level and realize that we are safe enough to do so, we are all walking around with very, very similar limiting beliefs similar wounds, but we just haven't felt safe enough to speak about these things because they're taboo subjects. And ultimately, we think we're so different from other people. But when we start talking about the truth, we are more alike than we are different. We have similar wounding, similar limiting beliefs. We've been doing similar things in love, similar things in work, overgiving, self-abandoning, negative self-talk. And so once one person is talking about these sensitive, vulnerable subjects, other people feel safe to do so too. And that's where transformation works. Transformation happens in safe spaces. When we lift the shame, put it in the bin, and carry on and walk in love instead.
Oh, wow, wonderful. So, I mean, I can see, your sisterhood group, going in and having just an amazing time and then coming back feeling like they're on fire and they can change the world. So thank you for that. So, what would you say would be Nina's legacy? What would be if you had to sum up what your legacy and your contribution to the world would be? How would you do that? How would you define that?
I would say that, it's being vulnerable to lay all of my sort of adversities out there. Once I released the shame in my own life and understood that it come from places that weren't my fault, and I'm like, no, I'm here to be vulnerable. I'm here to share it all and my journey, and then help women and men and women along their own journeys. Honestly and truly, for me, I am here to live my best life. So everything that I do is to help people live their best life too.
That was great.
We gotta have fun with it. Also, what I would say is, I think there's like this negative connotation around healing and transforming. But for me, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Like, healing can be really fun. It should be celebrated and it can be empowering. And that is kind of like my thinking behind retreats as well. Is because just because we unearth something or identify, something that's been suppressed in the subconscious for a very long time, doesn't mean that we now need to stay in this dark hole. We can park that, be like, okay, I've given that some love and attention today. Now this is not going to put my life on hold. I'm going out to have lots of fun. And we dance a lot on my retreats because it's beautiful. It's movement, it's fun, it's connection. Because just because we're on our personal development journey doesn't mean that we need to be hijacked by our trauma. Healing can be very fun as well. Life is for living, and we're here to live our best life,
Wow. Well, listen, Nina, thank you so much. Really, this has been quite an uplifting experience for me to spend this time discussing with you about healing. And you've said so many things that have resonated quite positively with me. So I just want to say a very big thank you. We will certainly have you back on the podcast, and we will do like round 2 or something.
Absolutely.
Final remarks. You get the last word. What would you like to be your last comment?
Just thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy to speak to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll speak soon.
Okay.